Welcome to another audit. I will start this off by saying it does have a flashing light warning on it for those that are photosensitive, so please be aware. We're going to be playing UFOPHILIA. I hope that is how you pronounce it. Just a reminder of our grading scale. It's a 0 to 10 accessibility scale, 0 being unplayable, in the middle, playable but needs significant improvements, and then 10 is accessible. We'll see if we ever get a 10. I can always be surprised. So the first thing, let's talk about this menu. You can disable motion blur, just a reminder. If you are photosensitive, motion blur and reflections, if those can be turned off or down, it is very important. So this game does not have a accessibility menu like labeled, right? However, it has a lot of accessibility features. Let's start with ambient occlusion. This is a lighting effect that needs to be able to be turned off in any game because it's so triggering for vestibular disorders or if you have any kind of seizure disorder. In this game, you can turn off God rays, bloom, and ambient occlusion. I love this. I cannot play games that do not have these options. It is so difficult to play. So bravo on that already. Another thing is the great cognitive accessibility in this menu. So not only does it have the visual piece where you can increase the size of the font for the menu, but it also has explanations of what each thing does. So bravo, love it. I definitely am impressed already just by this menu. So let's get into UFOPHILIA gameplay. First thing I notice, it has press R to turn flashlight on and off. I love the contrast on that. What I do not love is the size of the lettering. The font is a bit small. So whilst the contrast is good on the tutorial elements that you will see throughout the game, it isn't great for size. And there isn't a way to turn that up, unfortunately, in the menu at any point. If there was a way to adjust that, the font size in the game, that would be absolutely amazing. But as of right now, it does not have that. So if you've played games like Phasmophobia, Demonologist, Repo, those are very similar to this in conceptually. So I personally like those kinds of games. I can't unfortunately play like Phasmophobia because it's such an inaccessible game. So far, I am quite impressed with this demo. So fingers crossed that this will have enough accessibility that it's playable. So it lists the alien types that you can run into, and it tells you to access this laptop in order to get started. You have to go to this objective folder. It isn't great having the instructions of what to do next just on this board in the back. Having a text version of this would be great, similar to when you are in a game and you pick up a note and it has like the text version versus the handwritten version that you can access. It would be a very nice feature to have that for those instructions. So aesthetically in the trailer, I like it. It's very reminiscent of just ghost hunting or any kind of game like this. And I think that the keyboard and mouse controls are a bit cumbersome, and that's because this is recommended to play with a controller. So that does kind of create its own accessibility issue because it does play better on controller. So I'm on mouse and keyboard. So that's the perspective I'll be auditing from. The laptop is a problem. The green with the blue text and then the red. So you'll see that that red text under tips looks pink. That is because I'm red weak and I have on my color blindness filter. Without that, I actually wouldn't be able to read that at all. So I would definitely recommend removing the green, make the background, if you're going to do a solid darker color, make the background black and make the text white. It's a problem. It's not legible enough. So navigating this laptop will prove difficult, and it did prove difficult for me as well. The other thing is the font weight. So the line weight of these fonts, let me explain. So the weight of a font is referring to how thick it is. So when you see the letter, for example, a bolded letter versus a thin letter. So these are very thin, and that creates an accessibility issue visually and also cognitively. But I definitely think visually is where it puts the biggest barrier because it's not legible. If you have a thicker font, in most cases, as long as it's not a decorative font, you don't want fancy, thick fonts. You want it to be legible, and those will create a whole nother issue. So, having a thicker line weight, maybe bolding this one would make that easier. In the objective section, the issue I have is the color of the font. I think if this was just a black font with the white background, it would definitely be better. Anytime you're doing a light color, never put a lighter colored font on top of it. It just creates problems. And I think for visual purposes, this could definitely use that change. Thicker font weight, as well as having the color, not anything other than, like, if you're doing black, do white on black. If you're doing white, do white with black text. It would just make it a lot easier. Also, in this menu where it has the sections of like abduction or I have photos, what now? This is like the having a training option for this game is amazing. So you're able to run through and understand how things are used. They have in the upper left corner some other instructions. Those are against a black backdrop, and so those are much easier to read. So, cognitively, you're looking at how things are explained and the manner in which they are explained. So, sometimes having too much can be bad. I would say this one's in the middle for me. This is great where before you do a task, it will pop up what you need to do, what the tool does, and the purpose while you're training. I do appreciate and like that. Accessing things like the laptop is available as long as you're not holding an object in your hand, which is honestly quite realistic. The other issue, but there is an issue, there's an issue. So I like how the alien information is laid out and how it's easier to read, and it's kind of like a file. It's quite cool. It's very sci-fi, but it's still not cognitively accessible because things are not labeled clearly. So you have a bunch of information. It's all in the same area. It's kind of clumped together. So for myself, being autistic and ADHD, I do have a cognitive processing delay. So that combination of neurodivergence for me means the more text of instructions there are, the longer it takes me to read it, and the less likely I am to actually read all of it because it's overwhelming. So the way it has the instruction at the top and then the little line at the bottom with the other instruction is much easier for me to get through than the files on the laptop. So here we see the flashing lights, one of the flickering. So the flickering in an actual round is not continuous. It'll go off randomly. This can be a significant issue with vestibular disorders and seizure disorders. And for me personally, because I was able to turn off all of the lighting effects, it wasn't too bad for me. I can definitely see myself being able to play this for a longer period of time, but I still will need to probably take my medication to prevent a vertigo attack before playing. The activation of phases, again, we have the red text, which creates an issue. With my red week color blindness filter on, it makes it easier for me to read it. Otherwise, I would not be able to read it at all. The camera functions, this I will honestly admit was very confusing for me because there wasn't a clear way to trigger the camera. So because of my hearing loss, sound and audio cues don't work well for me. So if there's like a camera click sound, I don't hear that. So having that be a little bit vague is difficult for me. This flashing right here, though, however, is a lot. So having the camera with that night vision effect plus the flashing does create a significant issue cognitively for me because it triggers my sickness. And once my vertigo starts and the dizzy spells start, the less my cognition is. So that is an issue. However, since in actual gameplay, it won't be continuous, that might make a difference because I can actually move away from it. So that's honestly more about creating an accommodation for yourself. When you're playing games, there are things that are the developer's responsibility, and then there are things that are your responsibility as the disabled person. And the pieces that I see developers missing are just like those basic options of like turning things off, having readable font, having color contrast, that is good, having clear instructions, having ways, putting a light, flashing light warning. There's some games that just skip that completely. And I think that is 100% on the developer to make sure that accessible design is built into your game. On the player side of things, every disability has a variation. There's no by the book disability, and everyone will be unique. So there are things that you can do for yourself to make things accessible. Like, for example, I don't play with audio at all because of my hearing loss. And if I listen to audio from in one ear only, it's going to trigger a vertigo attack eventually. So I don't play with audio. Visually, I use color blindness filters so that I'm able to see things. I have special equipment that I use. I have a accessible mouse and I have an accessible keyboard that I have so I'm able to play. So there are things that you can do to mitigate barriers, but only if developers do that first part. So getting into the actual round itself, I will admit I was lost. Too much information was given, just information overload, coupled with the legibility struggles of the text. I just struggled to know what to do. Cognitive accessibility wise, it really could use some work. Really, really, really could use some work. That being said, getting into the actual mission itself, the instructions are on this board. I can see them and they are more legible than some of the other text, but it puts a cognitive load on you when you have to feel like you're deciphering things. However, there's something very good that they did right here. On the sections, like I just kind of picked up my first equipment from the training, but then I noticed it has step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. That was amazing. I was actually excited when I saw this because not a lot of games do this. Having the items laid out with when you need to use it during the different functions of the hunt, amazing. I was so happy with that. Otherwise, I would be going into this not knowing what to do at all. So, going in, the map very easy to navigate in the demo, at least. We'll see if there's more complexities in the actual game, but well done. So now, one of the things that it just really didn't do good on at all is audio. Having audio cues, there's a lot of audio cue reliant functions in this game, and that is just a huge barrier if you're playing and you have any kind of hearing loss at all. So for me, having to like hear footsteps or hear the alien around me, I can't. So having a visual cue that is paired with the audio cue would be the most accessible option for someone that has hearing loss. You need to be able to see it. If you ever are playing games such as Dead by Daylight, for example, the heartbeat is a visual cue that the killer is near you. And that helps people with hearing loss be able to play the game. So this part definitely will not be accessible to me. That being said, I can die a few times. It's okay. I think that I play all of my games without sound, and there are some games that work well and some that don't. But the biggest accessibility problem with this one, when it comes to the audio, is the lack of a visual cue paired with the audio cue. That would be a nice option to be able to turn off or turn on. I think that the music, when I first loaded in, was on 100, and the music is not super intense, which is nice. But yeah, definitely need some visual cues. So now for the final score of this game. Considering all of the things it did great and all the things that it definitely needs to improve on, it gets a 7. This game is playable. It has a lot of accessibility features that can be a huge benefit to anyone playing this game. And I think, from what I can tell, the way this is designed, I feel that the developers actually do care about accessibility. A lot of the things they did show that. Having the menu where it gives explanations, labeling the things on the tray, step 1, 2, 3, and 4, having the contrast of the tutorial, well done. There are a lot of good things about this game, and I can tell that there was a lot of thought put into accessibility specifically. I can't give it higher than a 7 because it does have significant need for growth. Definitely need fixing on the font and legibility and the laptop interactions and the audio having a visual cue. It does need quite a bit of improvement with that. However, if this game was coming out tomorrow, I could play it for a limited amount of time. So I give it a 7. I'm impressed. I am actually impressed with this one. I love games like Phasmo, but I can't play it because of the accessibility issues. So if this game, upon release, has fixed those things when it comes to the font, the instructions, and the legibility, I would 100% buy this game, and I would play the hell out of this game. And I think that moving forward, the more indie games that I review, the more hopeful I get for the gaming industry becoming more inclusive and seeing developers really try to design for everyone and not just design for aesthetic or just immersion purposes, but making sure games are accessible so anyone can play your game, because disabled people deserve to play just as much as anyone else. You can only benefit from making your game accessible. So, see you next time.